Hey everybody, this is my favorite Dr. Seuss book. It is also, to my knowledge, the only one of his books that comes with a warning. However, that is not the only reason that it's my favorite. Fox and Socks is unique in its structure. While some of Seuss's other books are collections like Yertle the Turtle and Other Stories and The Sneetches and Other Stories, this one is theoretically one story, but it is episodic. We follow the adventures of Mr. Fox and his companion, Mr. Knox, as they encounter one situation after another, each one more bizarre than the last. They are referred to as games by Mr. Fox, and his explanations to Mr. Knox about what's going on take the form of tongue twisters. Mr. Fox repeatedly encourages Mr. Knox to try to say this, leading to increasing confusion and frustration from Mr. Knox. In poetry, one of the most difficult concepts to introduce to students is meter. You can talk about iambs and dactyls and anapaests for days and write slashes and half loops on the board, pointing out the different rhythms in different lines of poetry, but for the most part, unless students have been in marching band or the JROTC, they have little sense of rhythm. And even then, the rhythm found in language is very different from the rhythm in music. Fox and Socks, like many of Seuss's books, is written in trochaic tetrameter. Each line has 4 sets of a 2-syllable pattern, stressed, unstressed. It's important to note that you do have to pay attention to the rhythmic pattern to find the ends of the lines, as the large typeface means that one line of poetry may actually take up 2 lines printed on the page. Sue sews socks of Fox and Socks now. Slow Joe Crow sews Knox and Box now. Mr. Knox, now, come now. You don't have to be so dumb now. Green Eggs and Ham uses the same meter. Would you eat them in a house? Would you like them with a mouse? However, while Green Eggs and Ham stays with the same pattern throughout, Fox and Socks does change things up from time to time. For example, in this section, Seuss, through the Fox, begins the explanation using spondies before returning to trochees. Mostly. Luke Luck likes lakes. Luke's duck likes lakes. Luke Luck licks lakes. Luke's duck licks lakes. Notice that each syllable is accented. But then we get more of the trochaic rhythm. Duck takes licks in lakes Luke Luck likes. Luke Luck takes licks in lakes Duck likes. But notice that it isn't as regular as it was before. Mr. Knox becomes more and more outspoken in his displeasure throughout the story, but Mr. Fox simply ignores his companion's protests and continues. As things escalate, we get further and further from that simple, regular pattern, leading up to what was initially the section that I had the most difficulty getting through, the cheese trees. Poor Mr. Knox's face. Try to say this, Mr. Knox, please. Through 3 cheese trees, 3 free fleas flew. While these fleas flew, Freezy Breeze blew. Freezy Breeze made these 3 trees freeze. Freezy trees made these trees as cheese freeze. That's what made these 3 free fleas sneeze. This section begins in iambic tetrameter, which is sort of the reciprocal of trochaic. Unstressed, stressed, rather than stressed, then unstressed. But midway through the second line, the rhythm hiccups on Freezy Breeze Blue. The rest of the verse continues mostly in trochaic tetrameter again, with paired spondies at the very end. 3 free fleas sneeze. Well, Mr. Knox throws an absolute fit. And then we come to my favorite part of the book, something that might be unmatched in any of Seuss's other children's books. A line of prose. Stop it, that's enough, sir. I can't say such silly stuff, sir. Very well then, Mr. Knox, sir. Let's have a little talk about Tweedlebeetles. It's unprecedented. If you're paying attention, it absolutely stops the story in its tracks. It's like, yeah, it's like that. Except that there's no visual intensity. It's just the change in the sound. And during The Last Jedi, that long beat of emptiness was what really underscored the power of that moment in the film. Yes, it's visually striking. It's vivid. It's dynamic. But it was that sudden wrench of absolute silence that made that moment what it was. So with Fox and Socks, because it's just the change in sound, it can be easy to miss. But this is the turning point. This is when the dominoes begin to topple. This is when Mr. Fox cracks his knuckles. It actually continues on the next page with another line of prose before returning to verse. The meter is fairly regular with an occasional pyrrhic foot, which is like a spondaic foot, is a supplemental unit that adds variety or draws attention to a section of the work. But upon turning the page, again, the meter changes. When beetles battle beetles in a puddle paddle battle, and the beetle battle puddle is a puddle in a bottle, this section could be read in 2-syllable feet, the way most of the rest of the book is, like most of the rest of Seuss's work. However, it feels right to me for it to be in 4-syllable feet. There's more of a lilt to it. It moves better. When beetles battle beetles in a bottle, paddle, battle, and the beetle battle puddle, the complete evenness of trochaic feet seems stilted and artificial here. These lines roll faster using what's called tertius paeon tetrameter. Yeah, I had to look that sucker up. The use of those 4-syllable feet tends to speed up the rhythm, which of course makes the tongue twister even more challenging. More significantly, it increases the intensity of the conflict that's been escalating over the course of the story. Then, down at the page-turning corner, we have "and" in all caps, and bold, with an ellipsis. The tertius paeon tetrameter continues on the next spread. Poor Mr. Knox is trying desperately to keep up with what's going on in front of him. And this time, the "and" is not only in all caps and bold, it's also in a larger point size. And Mr. Knox, well, he just breaks. But he doesn't just throw a fit like he did before. Oh no. First of all, he puts Mr. Fox into the middle of the complicated situation that he brought Mr. Knox to, and then proceeds to double down on Mr. Fox's rhythm with some tertius paeon tetrameter of his own, using spondies to shift into the trochaic meter with which the book first began. When a fox is in the bottle where the Tweedle Beetles battle with their paddles in a puddle on a noodle-eating poodle, this is what they call a Tweedle Beetle Noodle Poodle Bottle Paddle Buddle Duddle Buddle Waddle Fox and Soxer! And in the final double-page spread, it is Mr. Fox who looks on in confusion, as on the last page, we see Mr. Knox walking away in satisfaction with 2 parting lines of trochaic tetrameter. To quote the delightful Taylor Molly, Mr. Knox is effectively saying, "I am a poet. Eat my verbal dust." Fox and Socks, our game is done, sir. Thank you for a lot of fun, sir. I don't often get to show this analysis to my students. It's something I would have to work up to, given the typically limited familiarity with meter, and the underlying concept, which is that artists use the techniques of their media to create a particular effect, one that hopefully brings about the response they want from their audience, is one that I can illustrate using other techniques, such as figurative language. Figurative language is something that, since it's also used in prose, tends to be more common. As a result, A, students are more likely to have more familiarity with it, and B, they're likely to have more opportunities to use their understanding of it. Earlier this year, the business that manages the works of Ted Geisel, who published as Dr. Seuss and owns the publication rights, decided that they would no longer continue to publish some of his books due to their use of racist stereotypes. This announcement kicked up an impressive amount of fuss, and it's worth addressing. First of all, this is not government censorship. Dr. Seuss Enterprises was not sanctioned or fined by any government organization. Actually, print media is not all that highly regulated, especially compared to broadcast media like radio and television. People have been complaining that this is socialism or communism. Depends who you talk to. The thing is, it's not that either. What would be communism-ish would be if the government took over ownership and publication of Dr. Seuss's works and told Dr. Seuss Enterprises that since it was a private corporation and not governed by the state, it had no right to make decisions about what would or wouldn't be published. Or, any right to exist. This was a business decision by Dr. Seuss Enterprises in response to criticism about racist material in Seuss's work. criticism that has been continuing and increasing over a long period of time. In a statement released on March 2nd, Geisel's birthday, the corporation stated that they are committed to, quote, supporting all children and families with messages of hope, inspiration, inclusion, and friendship. The company noted that this was not a sudden decision, further stating, Dr. Seuss Enterprises, working with a panel of experts, including educators, reviewed our catalog of titles and made the decision last year to cease publication and licensing of the following titles and listed 6 books. They concluded, these books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. Whatever your views about these books or about this decision, I think it's reasonable to believe that Ted Geisel did not intend to, quote, portray people that in ways that are hurtful and wrong in the books that he wrote and illustrated for children. I have yet to find anyone arguing with that particular point. And I think the larger truth that we can deduce from that is that it's possible to say and do things that are hurtful and wrong even if we don't mean to. Even if what we want to do is educate and support, to inspire and encourage. The question that it raises is how we will respond when someone brings that to our attention. It's important to listen to people who are affected by a situation like this, rather than to assume that our own opinion is the only one that matters. Additionally, it's also important to remember that no group is monolithic. There are some statements and situations that have struck me as misogynistic that other women haven't seen in the same way. Likewise, there are statements and situations that other women have problems with that don't bother me. Just because I, as an individual woman, haven't experienced a particular situation, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened to others. Likewise, just because I don't find something hurtful, that doesn't mean it would be seen the same way by every other woman. So when you're questioning to what extent something is problematic, which is a polite way of saying bigoted, it's important to look for multiple authentic voices and to consider the perspectives and experiences of the people they come from. And it's important to listen and to do so in hopes of understanding rather than in hopes of rebuttal. I'm not sure if Geisel would have said that. I like to think that he would, but I don't know. While he definitely moved away from the racist stereotypes that he showed in his early work, I'm not aware of him making any actual apology for them. I am, however, hopeful. I am hopeful that the example of progress, of working to become better people, of listening and understanding, that this example becomes part of the legacy that we take from his work. If you have a favorite Dr. Seuss book, I would love to hear about it in the comments. So that's it, and bye for now, everybody.